I'm going to start with a dedication to another wonderful friend of mine who, well, you'll hear about it, so, who's no longer with us. So this is a dedication to Irving Atwell, who's we called Veenie. A sensitive, very intelligent guy, smart, capable, considerate, standing up for yourself whenever necessary. You were short, but you loved to shoot hoops. A tried and true son of the city, New York, Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, a nice block, quiet amidst a sea of humanity. With a backyard, as Brooklyn still had in the 60s, your father, Irving Sr., was from the Caribbean, proud, the first to break the color line on his job, and a good cook. Your mother, Caritha, with whom you had a close, understanding relationship, was hip, always caring, and supportive. She had a heart bigger than Louisiana. You had her deep, knowing eyes. You were an only child. Perhaps the why is not important. We met at farm and wilderness camps in Vermont, Tamarack Farm, young adults with their first taste of freedom, living diversity when it was still dangerous before it became fashionable. Later, we met again at Bard College. You were my gateway to the whole black subculture of our country, digging the soul stations in Manhattan at the very top of the AM dial, coming to a stoplight, passing a joint, looking to our right, two cops parked in a squad car watching our exchange, sitting for 10 seconds in trepidation until the light changed. We drove off, they never moved. But it's true. But our real love was jazz. Village Vanguard, primarily, once the Village Gate, twice the Beacon Theater on Broadway. We saw Monk, Bill Evans, Roland Kirk in his prime, honking us out of the aisle. Diz, we saw Herb when he split from Miles and formed his own group. Kirk was also in the audience that night when Herb came out, listening. We saw Bean and Barry Harris have a musical argument all night. We heard Herb and Ron and Tony in the chapel at Bard for 2 hours, sitting in front of them about this far away. We heard Kirk, Yusef Lateef, and Turrentine just after Coltrane died, and we were wondering who would assume the mantle of the next saxophone great. We caught the Temptations at the Brevoort in Brooklyn. We went to the Apollo a couple of times, and we listened and talked a lot about jazz on records. One night, I was the only white person at a block party dancing down the street from your brownstone. At Bard College, you met Catherine. You fell in love completely. You were very dark. She was very blonde. You were 5'6". She was 4'11". Striking. Her father, a career diplomat, could never acknowledge, accept, or begin to understand the love between the two of you. Her younger sister was ill and did not have long to live. Your picture, you and Kat, appeared one day on the back page of the Daily News, dancing at a disco. The two of you decided the right thing to do was to break up your relationship in consideration for her family, her father. It broke your heart permanently. After college, you were a struggling young therapist. You studied with Anna Freud. There were other girlfriends, relationships progressively less successful. Hardened by New York City, you had developed a cocaine habit. One day, you met Miles in the gym, but where was your heart? You moved out of New York City for the first time in your life around age 40 with your girlfriend. She had a job in Frankfort, Kentucky. I lost track of you. Half a dozen years later, I heard third hand you had committed suicide. A sensitive black man in a culture that could not allow him to pursue the love of his life due to the color of his skin. A love that was pure, deep, open, obvious, vulnerable, and would have meant a lifetime of defense when it should have been an inspiration to us all. Jazz is all I have. You were an only child. You were my brother. You died of a broken heart, and I miss you very much. Every soul needs a proper goodbye. Caritha, my apologies, whether you were alive or dead, for not getting to share my condolences with you. So that's the start. Thank you. And the two other poets who've had the greatest influence on me. The first is Carl Sandburg. This is Complete Works. And my sister gave me this. And when Archibald MacLeish, this was written in 1943, when Archibald MacLeish was under appointment to become Assistant Secretary of State, he met before a congressional examining committee under oath, and they wanted to know the portents and the meanings of his poems. In response to which, Carl Sandburg wrote this: "On a flimmering flume you shall ride. Nobody nougers the shaft of a slough. Nobody slimbers a wench with a winch, nor higgles, armed each with a niggle, and each the flimdrat of a smee, each the inbiddy hum of a smoo. Then slong me dorst with a flag darsh, then creep me deep with the flag bright. Let idle winds ploot-daddle the dorshes, and you, in the gold of the gloaming, you shall be sloam with the hoolriffs. On a flimmering flume you shall ride. They shall tell you, be dish and desist. On a flimmering flume you shall ride." So that's my favorite Carl Sandburg. And this one, the next one is a short piece by Eduardo Galeano, who, for those of you who don't know who Eduardo Galeano, Elazar knows who he is. He was here a couple of months ago in First Congregational Church, and when Obama was elected, Hugo Chavez from Venezuela gave him a book to read. The book was by Eduardo Galeano, who is, this is called The Book of Embraces, but the real life work is Memory of Fire, which Michael turned me on to. So I did have the privilege of hearing and read his own work just within the last couple of months. So I'm going to read a short piece for you. This is called Celebration of the Human Voice, number 2. Their hands were tied or handcuffed, yet their fingers danced, flew, drew words. The prisoners were hooded, but leaning back, they could see a bit, just a bit down below. Although it was forbidden to speak, they spoke with their hands. Pino Ungerfeld, forgive my Spanish here. Michael, you can correct me later. Pino Ungerfeld taught me the finger alphabet, which he had learned in prison without a teacher. Some of us had bad handwriting, he told me. Others were masters of calligraphy. The Uruguayan dictatorship wanted everyone to stand alone, everyone to be no one in prisons and barracks throughout the country. Communication was a crime. Some prisoners spent more than 10 years buried in solitary cells the size of coffins, hearing nothing but clanging bars or footsteps in the corridors. Fernandez Huidobro and Mauricio Rosenkopf, thus condemned, survived because they could talk to each other by tapping on the wall. In that way, they told of dreams and memories, fallings in and out of love. They discussed, embraced, fought. They shared beliefs and beauties, doubts and guilts, and those questions that have no answer. When it is genuine, when it is born of the need to speak, no one can stop the human voice. When denied a mouth, it speaks with the hands, or the eyes, or the pores, or anything at all, because every single one of us has something to say to the others, something that deserves to be celebrated or forgiven by others. So that's Eduardo Galeano.